So I just keep all my sites in a specific folder at the moment. What I'll do is I'll create a special directory just for this one. We'll call it Tom Sutton Heating, and we will go into that directory, and we'll just init a Drupal project inside there. So let's go get the Drupal code. Now there's a fantastic tutorial available on Drupal.org about how to use Git and set up a development workflow. So if we type in Git Drupal, there's a fantastic walkthrough of how to build a site with Drupal using Git. And if you're not familiar with what Git is a way of managing changes to your source code. And this site, this web page here, walks you through it perfectly. But in simple terms, it just pulls the content for a Drupal site down, the files needed, and initializes a project. So, and we'll claim that into our Tom Sutton Heating folder. So what this is doing at the moment is it's contacting Drupal.org and it's downloading all of the source code for a Drupal project. And while that's downloading, I'll just quickly create a Apache config file for this Drupal site. So in a separate window, we'll go into Tom Sutton Heating and we'll print the directory of that. Now I already have Apache installed on my laptop here. Apache is the web server which serves up Drupal websites, and of course you have that installed on your server as well. And I will create a config file for this. Okay, so this is how I create virtual instances on my local host. It's a way of, how to say this, it's a way of not having to manually create a virtual host config file for every individual host, because when you're doing a lot of websites, generally they all have the same config files, and the only thing that really varies is the directory that they're in and the name of their address, so example.com compared to example.com2 or example2.com. And all this does here is it creates a loop for each website. So if you see here at the top we have what's called a macro, and the macro loops round for each host, port and directory which is defined below. And here you'll see lots of other sites that I've just practiced with down here. So I'll just copy this one and create the new site. So if you remember, I copied the directory to my clipboard earlier, and I'll just paste that in here because that's where we're storing the source code for Drupal. And I will create a web address, a local pretend web address for this. So we'll call it local heating. I'll just put L Tom Sutton Heating. It's just personal preference. I tend to put L in front of the domain names to remember that it's the local site. Now I'll copy that to the clipboard, save that. And now, because obviously that is not a real web address, I have not purchased that web address, I'll create a manual entry in my hosts file so that we can use that web address and pretend that it's a real one. So we'll do edit our hosts file, and see here we've got a few that are very similar to the Apache file. Same process as before. And we'll paste in the address there. So what that's done is it's telling the computer, whenever I type in ltomsuttonheating.co.uk, please go to the local host instead of trying to find that website on the real internet, if you will. Okay. And in order to load that configuration into Apache, we have to reload Apache. Apache 2 and reload. We don't have to restart Apache for this. So if you imagine this was on a live site and you had lots of websites running, restarting Apache can be quite detrimental to the experience of your users if you have lots of people currently on your websites. So reloading is a way of gracefully reloading a new configuration. In fact, there is a way to also gracefully restart Apache, because if you don't do it gracefully, then it will cut off any connections that currently are being served, and people will get an instant cut of their connection, which obviously is a bad experience. Okay, so now we've loaded that into our Apache config, we should be able to go to that address. So let's see what happens. So Tom Sutton page isn't working, error 500. Excellent. So that means there's obviously an error, but the web server has responded. This is because we haven't finished setting up Drupal 8 yet.